to the All Things Good podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Things Good podcast. I'm your coach and your host, Jovanna. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast that helps you with self-development, mental health, and your overall wellness, helping you become the greatest version of yourself. Today, we're going to be speaking to a sought-after keynote speaker and leadership trainer. Not only is he a leadership trainer and an author of Leading with Emotional Intelligence, he also is an improv comedian. And this is what sets Alan apart. He now teaches organizations how to use improv to strengthen executive presence, build trust, and supercharge collaboration. Help me by welcoming Alan. Welcome, Alan. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm so glad to have you on. I feel like you have an amazing personality, first and foremost, but I love the fact that you mentioned you have some improv comedy within your background. So we'll touch into that a little later, but I know you're excited. You're ready. You're ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay, so tell us about yourself. When you look back at your journey through finance, sales, higher education, improv, I mean, you have a collaboration of a lot of things, which is awesome because I feel like at this day and age, you need these things, right?
Oh yeah, you've got to have a lot of things going on. I spent probably most of my time, 20 years, working at colleges and universities. But it's not what people usually imagine. I wasn't a professor. I was in what they call student affairs. And so for your listeners who've been to college, it's the people who run the residence halls or the multicultural center or the fraternity and sorority office or the club office or the career center, that kind of stuff, right? And so that was my field for 20 years. Really, really cool. Kept me young because getting to work on college campuses was amazing. My last college was the oldest continuously operating women's college in the country, founded in 1772, right? So whenever the U.S. is like, it's our anniversary, our 100th, this college is like, whatever, dude, hold our beer. We've been educating women since before you were even a country. But I did that for about 20 years. And through that process, I did a lot of leadership programs for students. And over time, you know, a business would hear about this and I would get called to a business or a city government or a town government or a chamber of commerce. And over time, I realized that the leadership training I was doing for college students, I could do those for grownups and make more money doing it and derive joy and have work-life balance that I could never have in my old profession. And in my old profession, we were working 50 hours, 60 hours a week. And you do it because you love it. You do it because you love the students. But I enjoy not having to get calls at 1 a.m. as an assistant dean of students about what one student has done to another student. I take a lot of, I very much appreciate the blessing and the privilege it is to not have to do crisis management anymore.
Right.
And so now I go around the country, and as long as there are bad bosses, I will have work.
You will forever be employed, sir.
I'm going to have work for a long time as long as there are bad bosses. Sadly.
I know it is sad. It is very, very sad.
Yeah.
So tell us, what chapter out of everything that you've, have experience in has shaped the leader that you are right now the most?
Oh my gosh. So there's sort of two things. One is I was a diehard band nerd, marching band, the whole,
Okay.
My wife and I met in our college marching band. She was on the drum line. I was a trombone player. It was love across a crowded field. You know the story, right? But when I was in high school, I started learning about leadership, even though I didn't know I was learning about leadership, because I always wanted to be in charge. I wanted to be the drum major, the person that conducted on the podium, right?
Right.
And I auditioned and didn't get it. And I auditioned and didn't get it. I kept not getting it. And then my senior year, we got to like our band banquet and the awards ceremony. And I won all of these awards. Some of them were from my peers. Some of them were from my director. And that's not the important part of the story. The important part of the story is that I thought leadership had to be a title. And it doesn't have to be a title. And the one award that I'm most proud of, the director gave not just to me, but to me and 4 of my friends. Their names were Janine, Amy, Beth, and Amber. And our band director got cancer when I was in college. And the five of us, I guess, banded together, pun intended, and we just like kept the spirit going a little bit, right? And we didn't know it was leadership. We didn't know it was group leadership. I didn't know that group leadership was a thing or that it was important, but that was one of the first lessons I learned. And then another was when I was in college, I was not a great college student. My It took me 7 years to finish instead of 4.
Mm-hmm.
And my GPA was 2.16, which
Okay.
is not great. And so I joke when I do keynote speeches that a lot of my friends graduated magna cum laude and summa cum laude. I just graduated thank the laude. Can't believe this dude even made it, right? And now, for those on the video, now you can see I've got like a bunch of degrees now. And so but me constantly being on the edge of failing built more empathy with me, built more understanding. And then when I eventually worked with colleges and universities and worked with college students, the fact that I wasn't this perfect success story helped me so much, because all of us are imperfect, right? And all of us are on our own imperfection journey. And in some ways, that imperfection is perfect in its own way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So those two things in particular, marching band taught me so much about leadership. And then also being on the verge. And when I was in college, I was working 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. I was not exactly the traditional college student, but that gave me a depth of empathy that helped me serve college students and advise them for 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. You said so much. Okay, so the first thing you stated was that leadership doesn't always require a title.
No.
And I firmly believe that. I tell my daughter all the time, because some of us are just born leaders, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I know my daughter is a born leader, and I tell her all the time, like, I intentionally asked her to sign up for classes that required leadership training.
Mhm.
And she's like, well, I'm not a leader. I'm like, but you are a leader wherever you go, whether you are
Yeah.
cleaning the toilets,
Yep.
whether
Yep.
you are serving as a hostess, wherever you are leading.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that you took this and you were like, you know what? I'm going to dive deeper into this, and I'm going to learn about it and teach the emotional intelligence, because that,
Yeah.
my friend, is
It's
missing.
it's missing. It's missing. And the thing you said about your daughter, with my children, whenever they say, I don't know how to do this, or I can't do this, I just give them one word back. I say, yet.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy, I can't do this. Yet. Daddy, I don't know how to yet. Everything I know how to do, I didn't know once upon a time. So the power of the word yet is I can learn, I can grow, I can figure it out. I can
Right.
persevere, you know? But yeah, and the emotional intelligence piece, it's huge. It's missing in leadership. And there's so many layers there. There's so many
Right.
layers. I mean, you know, the what we think of as professional behavior, air quotes, what we think of as leadership, a lot of it's left over from the Industrial Revolution, when, you know, it was all white guys in the workforce, right? And it was white norms and men, the norms that men had. And then when the workforce got more diverse, it's not like those guys called a timeout and said, hey, we need to reevaluate what we count as appropriate for work, right? And so it's been this very, very slow peeling back of these norms that these white dudes were holding up that are just out of date, incomplete, a lot of them bad, a lot of them misogynistic, or you know, holds up racism and things like that. And so, you know, one of the things I do with groups is I'm like, look, y'all can create your own culture. You don't have to assume that when you say professional, everyone thinks the same thing. If you have 100 people in the room and say the word professional, you got 100 opinions on what that actually means. So I teach groups, hey, what if you got your managers together in the room? And what if we got out some smelly markers and some poster paper, and I asked you all, what do you expect of each other at work every day? What do you expect of each other? And then we put it up all on the board. And then I say, hey, you have this list on the board: respect, listening, all these things that are part of emotional intelligence. Can we commit to this? Can you all as a team commit to the things on this list? Or do we need to modify it? We can cut some things, right? But I want to make sure that we can commit to some things, because then, instead of professional being this random thing we inherited from, you know, 80 years ago that's out of date and incomplete, instead, y'all have made your own version of what professional is. And there's more voices at the table now, right? And so I teach groups how to do that and how to take charge of their own culture, instead of just being an accidental collage of 100 different cultures if you have 100 different staff members, you know? Yeah.
I love that. I love the fact that you're implementing input from the coworkers, from the employees, because hello.
It could be important to listen. That could be an important thing.
It really could be.
It could be. We might be onto something.
So you mentioned doing things from 80 years ago where everything was, centered on white male
Yeah.
Americans. What is one belief that you had about leadership years ago
Yeah.
that you no longer believe?
Oh my gosh. So I think one thing I used to believe is that leadership was just about the influence you have over people. And
Mm,
when you think about that, that's how a lot of us think about leadership. That leadership is, oh, can you influence a lot of people? There's even a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a very separate version of leadership because that's using people instead of being in community with people,
mm,
instead of collaborating with people. And it imagines that there's sort of someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. There's going to be conflict, and there's sort of this top down might makes right hierarchical leadership thing. And I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't think that's
mhm,
leadership. I think that we could call that managing. We could call it
mhm.
coercion. We could call it bullying sometimes.
Yes.
But real leadership is, can you get your team around the table? Can you get them to get inspired by something? Can you get them to build something together that they're committed to? I ran a career center at the only Quaker college in the South, which was a really, really cool experience. And as soon as I got there, my boss said, you could write a new mission statement for the Career Center. And look, I had read all the books about career centers. I'd been to all the conferences. I had a bunch of degrees. I could have sat down at my desk in 20 minutes and written the perfect mission statement. But
Right.
that's not what I did. In the summer when it was slower, got the whole team together, 12 of us got around the table, spent 2 hours on 2 different days crafting a mission statement. Did we come up with pretty much what I could have come up with? Sure. And I did shape it a little bit, but I
Right.
listened and I got their voices into it. And they knew their voices were in it, and then they were committed at a different level. I could have just done the efficient thing and written it and brought it to the team and said, "This is the new mission statement." And I know a
Right.
lot of managers that do that because they want to flex their muscles or assert
Mhm.
themselves and whatever. And two, speaking of gender and race a little bit, I understand that as a man, I've got a level of privilege here that where I can go in to be collaborative and not have to assert myself. And I understand that women who supervise uh, staffs that are full of men and women have to proceed differently, right?
Mm,
Because women by default, because of misogyny, are not taken as seriously, right? And so sometimes women have the pressure of, I have to do a few things that show that I'm in charge so that people
mm,
will remember I'm in charge. Especially women on the like in the first 10 years of their career and the last 10 years of their career, right? Women deal with age discrimination in the workforce most of their career, like the first like 15 years of their career and the last 15 years. So like congratulations women who are exactly like 32 years old. You're in the sweet spot where maybe you don't have age discrimination. But up until that point, people are give you a lot of like young lady this and young lady that, either verbally or subconsciously. And then past a certain point, they're discriminating too. Men, we only face age discrimination at the very, very, very end of our career, right? The last like 5 years, then it's like, old man, what do you know, right? But and so like I had a guy once, he was like, yeah, what about age discrimination for men? I'm like, well, sure, that's a thing at the very end of your career for 5 years. But friend, women got to deal with it for 30 of their 35 years in the workforce. So have a seat maybe and be patient and listen a little more closely. Yeah, so so I think that one of the things I used to believe is that it was just about influence, but now I believe it's about listening, it's about empathy, it's about awareness, it's about the growth mindset, it's about these things that make a good leader. Yeah.
I love that because listening is so important.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
say this from complete experience because I was a part of a team,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever I had my input, it wasn't necessarily considered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that can make someone feel as if they're in value, like their value has, like there's no value to what they
Yeah.
have to say, what they have to
Yeah.
input. And so listening is very, very important.
It's huge. It's huge. And there's a couple aspects to it. So I'm married to a counselor.
Mhm.
And counselors learn this technique called active listening, right?
Right.
Where someone says something and you say, what I think I hear you saying is this. Well, even though counselors use that, that doesn't mean leaders can't use that. The technique is great either way. But the other thing, I do a lot of work with extroverts and introverts, right? The Myers-Briggs. And with extra, and I'll tell you two funny things about it. Well, one interesting thing and one thing that I think is funny. But extroverts and introverts, one of the things I tell people is, as a leader, listening is one skill. Making the person in front of you feel heard is a whole separate skill. It's a whole separate skill, right? So the introverts might be a little better at the listening part, but not as good as making you feel heard. The extroverts tend to be pretty good at making you feel heard, but have a harder time on the actual listening part because we have to shut up, and extroverts don't like to shut up, right? And so it's listening is one skill, but making people feel heard is a different one, and those are both critical. Something else I'll tell you about extroverts and introverts, and this is funny. I'll break teams into groups, and I'll put all the extroverts on one side and the introverts on the other side, and I'll say, "How many of you know the phrase resting Mitch face with an M?" And they go, "What?" I'm like, "Resting Mitch face," and they're like, "No, we don't know that phrase." And there's actually a comedian, I think it might have been Kevin Hart, I can't remember. There's a comedian who said it once, but generally, it's not a phrase that most of us know about, but we know what it rhymes with. You know what I'm saying, right? And I say to people, I'm like, this is where introversion intersects gender, because women who are introverted get accused of having RBF, right? That is not fair. I've been alive 51 years. No stranger has ever come up to me and said, "Oh, honey, you need to smile more." No stranger has told me to smile. And yet many women who are introverts get told that daily, that they need to smile more. And then I tell teams, I'm like, okay, so now you know that all women who are introverts are dealing with these stereotypes. By the way, look across the room. If any of those women happen to be Black women, happen to be Latina women, guess what? They get the bonus pack of stereotypes. Oh, she's got an attitude, or this, that, or the other, right? And so I'm trying to make people aware that introversion and extroversion is part about our energy and how we communicate, but everyone in the room's got a gender. Everyone in the room's got race ascribed to them and a lived racial experience too. And so, like, I work with these leaders. It's funny when people ask my wife what I do for a living, she goes, "He mostly makes his fellow white guys uncomfortable and gets paid for it." And I'm like, fair.
I love that. I love that. Now, I want to talk a bit more about emotional intelligence, but would you say that emotional intelligence is more important than having a skill?
I mean, that's a great
Or
question.
equally important?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that one of the things that I recognize about emotionally intelligent leaders is they know what they do know, and they know what they don't know. And so there was all this pressure in the 80s and 90s for leaders to have all the answers. And so if your people came to you, and they'd have to kind of BS their way through an answer or whatever, because the idea was not having an answer is a sign of weakness. Here's the thing. One of the best, and I didn't even work for this guy, but he was the dean of students at a college where I worked, and I just admired him. He was a lawyer before, so he wasn't really trained to do student affairs work. And because of that, he was humble about it. He knew that if somebody had a question about good residence life policy, he didn't know. He was a lawyer, but he knew that he didn't know. And he would call up his assistant director, Jen. He'd be like, "Jen, you're the expert in residence hall stuff. You give me the expertise." And leaders who can say confidently, "I don't know," and then throw in that word that I mentioned earlier, "yet," that's powerful. People respond to that, because otherwise the pressure is to know. And also, I got to say again, that it takes courage for any leader to say, "I don't know." And it takes more courage across the lines of gender and race as well, right? And so, because if I say, "I don't know," I don't think for a second that any of my colleagues go home thinking, "Oh, white guys don't know. White guys are incompetent." That they are ascribing my not knowing to people who look like me. But if I'm a woman, that happens all the time. If I'm a minoritized human, if I'm a Black person, if I'm an indigenous person, if I'm Latina, that happens all the time, where one person that's a leader in the spotlight saying, "I don't know," and then the misogyny racist thing kicks in, and somebody's like, "Well, that's because she's this, or that's because he's that," or whatever. And so I want to say to all leaders out there, try to have that courage. And I also want to say, I recognize that even though it takes courage for all leaders, including white guys, right? It takes courage for me to say, "I don't know." It takes that much more courage for women, and that much more courage for women of color as well. And so all leaders need courage. And I just want to say that I invite leaders to boldly say, "I don't know." Throw the word "yet" on the other end. And I want to recognize that it takes different levels of courage for different people, depending on who they are. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. And we have to remain teachable. And
Yes.
because I think a lot of people, because it's like you said, we want to seem like we know everything, especially if we're getting paid the big bucks to do it, right? But
Right.
remaining teachable, I feel like, is a good characteristic for anyone
It is.
to have, because hello, we're in the place where everyone is learning from each other.
I learn something every day. I learn new things every day. Just a few days ago, I was talking to a client, and we were talking about body language across different cultures. And a lot of their team is in India. And so in the US, if I do my head like this, it means I agree. If I do my head like this, it means I disagree. In India, here's the thing though. In India, do you know about this?
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So let me see if I get it right. In India, disagreement is still this, right? But agreement is this. And like, it hurts my neck to even do that because I don't do that in my culture, right? But so like, we can learn something every day. And I actually did a podcast earlier today, and they asked about one of the key components of leadership. I said, one of the key components, my friend, is curiosity. And the internet and social media and immediate access to knowledge is trying to kill curiosity. Because trust me when I say I used to sit in restaurants in the 80s and 90s and have debates with my friends about, oh, well, that actress, was she in that movie? And there was no way for us to look it up. Like
Right.
we would argue, oh, no, she was definitely in that movie. No, she wasn't. Yes, she was. No, she wasn't. We're arguing all dinner. There's no way to look it up. And even after we leave, we can't look it up. We can't go back to our dorm or our apartment. There's no internet. Like, how did we even function? And now we are in this information age and the misinformation age. And what we need to do is move into the discernment age. The discernment age is what's coming next. But it's going to be, it's a bumpy ride ahead of us because the misinformation age is all around us.
Yes.
And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And AI is going to make it worse before it gets better. Eventually, AI will be our friend and our partner. But there's going to be some birthing pains as we go through this AI transition that's going to be tough for people. And discernment is the thing that matters. It's not what's factual, because I can find that on Wikipedia. It's what's the most important fact for the challenge that my business has, the challenge that my government has, challenge that my community has. What's the most important fact, not just what is factual, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, we have so much access to information right now that it's so scary. I mean, I see things on the internet and I'm just like, I really have that like perspective where I'm not just going to believe everything that I see, everything I read, and people are so quick to fall into a narrative or something that they see just because it's on the internet, but that doesn't mean that it's actually a fact.
And because it confirms what we believe, right? And so this is one of the things is when I see a video on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, and if I'm upset about a social issue, say for example, I'm upset about how ICE is behaving in the United States.
Right.
If I'm upset about that and I see a video that makes them look bad, my instinct is, yeah, no, of course. And then I gotta check myself. I'm gonna be like, is this AI? Is this real? Can I? Discernment is when you fact check the things that actually make you feel good about your position to make sure you're scrutinizing yourself. It's easy for me to fact check the things I disagree with, right? The things when I see something online, it's like, so-and-so said this, and I'm like, yeah, that's not true. And then I fact check it because I want it to not be true. And then I find out it's not true. The harder thing is to hold myself accountable for the things that appeal to my confirmation bias, I guess is the fancy way to say it. But the things that appeal to, because the algorithm wants me to stay on. The algorithm wants me to keep going. So it wants to get me angry or it wants to get me self-righteous about how I feel about an issue. That's what it wants me to do. And anytime something wants me to get angry, I'm like, who's profiting from me getting angry? Oh, okay. The platform. Oh, okay. The person about to sell me something. So it's a discernment is we got to challenge ourselves, y'all. We got to challenge ourselves to fact check even the things that seem intuitive and right. We gotta fact check a little bit. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that falls along the line of emotional intelligence as well, because I mean, everything that we're seeing is to trigger an emotion, whether
It
it be
is.
fear, whether it be anger, or it could
Is.
just be sadness or compassion, empathy. There's
Yeah.
all these emotions that get triggered. And I
Yeah.
wanted to share something. It reminded me, I'm a big dreamer,
Yeah.
and I had a dream that every time that we were, okay, so it was like we were programmed as robots, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in this dream, every time we responded and reacted out of emotion, the robotic responses came about. But every time we breathed, every time we took a breath, every time we paused, every
Mm-hmm.
time I'm getting the chills, every time we waited
Yeah.
and actually discerned what was happening,
Yeah.
we were no longer robots. We were
Yeah.
actually spirit, like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was so profound,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
profound.
And one of the things you're speaking to that at least I hear in what you're saying is we got to remind ourselves what it means to be a human, right?
Mm,
Because in the next 2 to 5 years, we are going to have robots walking around, and I'm not even kidding. We're going to have robots walking around that we are going to mistake for humans.
mm,
Sometimes it's going to be at a distance. We're going to think it's a human, and we got to get close up on them and be like, "Oh, wait a second. Your tear ducts, your eyes don't look, you know." But there's going to be these times, and like when I think about when the internet goes down, I kind of shut down in a way. Okay,
mhm.
well, I lived the first 35 years of my life with no internet. How did that happen? How did that, what, right? And so, like, I used to take students on a retreat, like for a leadership program, and I would tell them, I would say, look, real quick, text and call your parents, your loved ones, etc., and then tell them, I'm going to put my cell phone in Alan's cell phone basket, and I'm not going to see it again until tomorrow at noon. And they would freak out. And then I would be all slapsticky and funny. I'd be like, I'd show them the landline phone at the cabin in the wood. Like, this is a landline. The dean of students knows where we are. I know how to call 911. I survived 3 decades of my life without a cell phone. It's hard to remember how, but I did. And so intentionally unplugging sometimes is so valuable. And it's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard because my best friend is in St. Pete, Tampa. I text her 20 times a day, right? And sometimes I'm texting her and her husband, and we're laughing and whatever. And I don't want to disconnect from that. I don't want to miss out on what's happening in their lives. But also, I need to unplug sometimes, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that it's and I think that this is a lot of us think that wealth is about money, but I think in the next age, in the next era, we're going to find that wealth is about walking into a park, that
Mm.
wealth is about listening to live music without your phone in the air to record it because everyone else is recording it anyway.
Right.
That life is about giving a hug to a loved one and standing on a beach. And, for me, it's visiting Epcot down at Disney World and sipping my espresso, right? That it's about the richness of the experience of this life. And and I'm not saying technology is bad. I'm saying that I want to limit it so I can remember how human I am and remember
Right.
what it means to be human outside the technology. If as long as we remember what it's like to be human outside the technology, we can use the technology like a tool and it's healthy.
Right.
If we forget what it's like to be human without the technology, that's when we're in some trouble. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. And we can continue that topic on, I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole with
So
that.
much, so many layers. Yeah.
This has been
Mm.
so good so far. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let's talk about more about emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Now, you teach leaders how to navigate complexity, right?
Yes.
What is the biggest emotional blind spot that you have seen in organizations?
Oh my gosh, ego, ego, ego. And let me go ahead and tell you that that probably about 90% of the ego problems organizations deal with is my people, men. Now I'm not saying that, but I said 90% because there is in Myers-Briggs personality types, there is a personality type that's very ego driven, whether you're a woman or a man. And so there
Mm-hmm.
are some women that fall into that trap, but much, much, much less. It's men's egos, men's inability to be vulnerable by saying they don't know.
Mm.
And then also not just that, but there's no incentive for anybody who's in a privileged spot to learn about other cultures. There's just not an incentive. I knew this guy, his name was Smith Jackson, and he was a dean of students at this university in North Carolina. And he was a white guy. And I was asking him questions, interviewing him for a research project. And I asked him about the Black Lives Matter movement and protests on campus and how he was supporting students but also managing, right? It was a tightrope, right? Because they want to support the students doing the protest, and they also want to manage it because the protest might disrupt teaching classes, and he's trying to balance it all, right?
Right.
And he said to me something, and he got a little choked up, and this stuck with me. He said, "Alan, I can take all of my staff who are a lot of them are white people. I can take them through every training. I can take them through anti-racism training, LGBT inclusive training, religious diversity training. I can take them through all these trainings. And at the end of the day, they still go home to white suburbia and watch white TV shows and read white books." Mm-hmm. And this is a white man saying this. And what I got from that is there's really no incentive for me as a white man to be curious about the Black diaspora, the African diaspora, to be curious about the experience of Vietnamese people in North Carolina, for me to be curious about the broad Latina community, which, we say Latino, Latina, Latina, and that's like 17 different countries with a lot of different cultures, multiple languages. I mean, this is what the U.S. does, is we kind of lump people together to categorize for simplicity. And so what I'm saying by there's no incentive is that for people at the top of any hierarchy, so it's white people or heterosexual people or men or non-disabled people, they don't have to think about these things. They don't have to think about anybody who's not like them. Mm-hmm. So I did a TEDx talk. Can I share a little bit about my TEDx talk?
Sure, definitely.
In my TEDx talk, I was working at the oldest women's college in the U.S., 1772. And in my building, which was our student union student center, the upstairs had a women's room with multiple stalls, bathroom. The downstairs had a women's restroom with multiple stalls. And then there was one all-gender single-use restroom, which was the only place I could go to the bathroom. So for the first time in my life, I had to wait. I had to wait to go to the bathroom, right? All of my life, if I had a meeting at 11 o'clock, I'd walk out of my office at 10:55, go to the bathroom, still make it to the meeting, no problem. Didn't have to think about it. And so like a bolt of lightning, I was like, wait a second. My wife has been waiting to go to the bathroom for 47 years. So I got out a calculator. I'm like, okay, how many Broadway shows, kids concerts, sporting events, crowded restaurants do we go to in a year? And I estimated about 40. And I'm like, okay, and when I see women waiting to go to the bathroom, how many minutes is it? I said, I don't know, probably about 10. So I multiplied 40 times 10 times every year of my life.
Oh my gosh.
Let me just tell you, I have 720 bonus dude hours. I have 720 hours of my life that I've not had to wait to go to the bathroom. So the question is, if I've got 720
privilege,
it's privilege. So the question is, if I have 720 hours in the bank, what can I do to focus on women's issues? I can spend those 720 hours to read women authors, watch movies that are produced by women or directed by women, center on women's concerns. Similarly, one of the experiments I did is every time I walk into a room at a conference or at my workplace, as a white dude, I don't ever look around the room to see who looks like me. I don't do that. But I've had a lot of Black elders and some Latino elders tell me they walk into a room in a mostly white space. They look around the room real quick. Who's here? Who's here that might have something in common? And I see you nodding, right? Maybe, I don't know if that's part of your experience.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's 10 seconds, but it's 10 seconds times every room I've ever entered. Okay, so for that one, I've got like 1,400 hours. And I'm like, if I got 1,400 hours, I sure as heck can get on Google and type, is this phrase racist? And that cost me 30 seconds. 30 seconds. So now instead of 1,400 hours, I got 1,399 hours and 30 seconds left. And I found out if this phrase was racist or not. Right. And so it's how do you, because the reality is white people, especially poor white people, don't feel privilege. They don't feel it. Right. And so my TEDx talk was trying to say, you might not feel it, but not feeling it is its own privilege. I don't know what it's like to feel like I have to wait to go to the bathroom. I don't know what it's like to feel like I have to find someone who shares some cultural bond with me every time I enter a room. I don't know what that's like. Right. And so that's got to make me more humble, and it's got to make me more aware. Yeah.
I love that. Wow. I love your whole approach on life and just leadership and cultural diversity and learning. I mean, that's just amazing. And I mean, we should all be like that. I know that we won't, but it's a good characteristic to have.
We've got to because all of our liberation is connected to each other. All of our liberation for me, and with the tragic events, and I don't want to get too political. I mean, I do, but I'm not going to. But with some of the tragic events recently, white people in many ways are waking up to something that the Black and Latina community have been telling us for 250 years, right? And it's to me, I'm frustrated and sad that my people are late to the party, and you're at the party. Let's go. Let's march. Let's work together. Like it took you too long to get here, and we'll talk about that later. But right now, thank you. Welcome to the party, and let's put our bodies and our finances and our time on the line, because if we don't, finally, some white people are like, oh, wait, does that mean eventually we'll be next? I'm like,
yeah.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Like, did it have to get that far? Have you never loved someone who happened to be Black, or loved someone who happened to be gay, or loved someone who happened to be disabled, who has faced violence and discrimination? Have you never cared about a person that has something, and so again, slow to the party, but it's an important conversation that we've got to have. And all of us have privilege, and this is the thing that's interesting to me. Is sometimes I'll go into a room. I'm in the fifth largest historically Black fraternity in the country. I don't know if you know. Do you know the Divine Nine, the AKAs and the Deltas and so there are
yes.
Yeah. So the youngest is Iota Phi Theta, and I'm like the one white dude in a graduate chapter. And when I'm in that room with those men, I can't teach them anything about racism. They know way more about racism than I'll ever know. But if I hear them saying women this, that, or the other, or gay folks this, that, or the other, I can say, hey, look, I share manness with you, and why are we tearing down women in this space? What's that about?
Right.
And then I'll even say to them, I'm like, y'all think when I'm not with y'all, when I'm over in Whitey McWhiteville with all my white friends, you think, and somebody says something about the Black community or the Latin community, you think I'm just shutting up and not saying anything, or you think I'm saying something? And I'm saying something, but you got to understand that us men in here, even though I have white privilege and the rest of you do not, we all have male privilege. And if we're going to tear down women, we gotta check ourselves. We gotta watch that, right? So it's all interconnected, right? Where different communities are being torn down for no good reason, and there's things there's nothing I can tell the gay and lesbian community about homophobia. I can't tell them about that because I've never lived it, right? But if they are white, I can be like, hey, you and me share whiteness. Let's talk about that for a minute, right? And so I meet people where we have privilege in common. Because honestly, friend, I got the Costco 24 pack of privilege. Like, you know how you go to Costco, you want to buy 2 of something, but you're like, no, you can't buy 2. You got to buy 24. My privilege set that I was born with, it was just the whole pack, man. It was like more privilege than I'll ever need. And so I try to meet people where they are privilege wise, because they might be a college graduate. They might not be disabled right at this moment. And we can have that conversation. Yeah.
Right. And I would like for you to kind of contribute to, everything that you shared with the fraternity and just acknowledging people who are now waking up to what's really going on.
Yeah.
How important self-awareness is.
Oh
because
gosh.
even like with me, myself, if I could just share this really quickly. I work with 2, one of them is German and the other one, she's white. And she's from Florida. And so we have a group chat, and something funny was happening, and what I was going to say in the text message, you white people are weird.
Yes, we are.
But I said, you know what? I'm going to delete this because I don't want to offend anyone, because first of all, they need to hear my tone. They need to know where I'm coming from. And, I just don't want to offend anyone. So I didn't send the message. And she ended up seeing the message anyways. And I had to explain it. It was so funny because she ended up looking at my phone and she saw it. She was like, I'm like, girl, I didn't want to offend you. She was like, no, we are weird.
Right. And if she can say that, that's great. And I'll tell you 2 funny things. One is, one of the guys in the fraternity, Crosby, we call him Crosby. Every time there's an event, I say, Crosby, are you ready for your white guy moment of the week? And I bring him the whitest white guy thing I can think of, right? So we have this event that is coming up on the 3rd year. It's called Papas and Ponytails. And what we do is we bring in stylists from the community, and then we bring in dads and daughters, and the stylists teach their dads how to do their daughter's hair, right?
Oh, wow.
And so keep in mind, this is in the Black community. Like I'm just the one white dude that like over in the corner, right? But so we get to the event, and I knew we were going to have coffee and donuts. But I go up to Crosby. I say, Crosby, you ready for your white guy moment of the week? He goes, yeah, I'm ready. I said, Crosby, I brought my own travel mug from home with some oat milk and some Splenda in it because I knew we'd have coffee, but I didn't think we'd have oat milk and Splenda. I said, is that not the whitest white thing you've heard all week? He's like, that is the whitest white thing I've heard all week. That you came ready with your alternative milk, right? And whatever, right? That not that all kinds of communities might not like oat milk, but my people as a people are oddly obsessed with the non-milk milks, right? We're oddly obsessed with seed milks and nut milks and oat milks and all those things. One of the things too, though, when I do trainings, a lot of times if it's a 2-day training, I will ask folks to identify a culture they're part of and then come ready tomorrow to the next day to talk about something funny about their culture. Can I just tell you, white people are not good at this. White people, I had a white dude stand in front of me saying, oh, I think being tall is a culture. And I was like, dude, I'm 6'2". It's not a culture. We don't have our own music, our own cuisine, our own language. There's nothing cultural about being tall. You just don't know how to talk about being white. You're uncomfortable talking about being white. And so trust me, there's this great video. There's a comedian named Adam. He does this series called Adam Ruins Everything. And if your listeners ever get a chance, he has a great video called Adam Ruins Everything, the redlining edition. That's about the history of redlining in the United States. And he brings in Nicole Hannah-Jones, who some of your listeners might know was in the 1619, crafted the 1619 project. She got passed over by tenure at University of Chapel Hill. And so she was like, peace, I'm going to go to Howard. And it was awesome, like for her to just do that. But at the beginning of the video, because it's run by a comedian, he's in this white guy's home and he's like, yeah, your neighborhood's really white. And the white guy's offended. He's like, my neighborhood's not white. And he looks out the window, and outside the window is a white woman with an NPR tote bag full of kale and a dog with a sweater and drinking a soy latte. And I'm like, that's my people right there. That's the whole set of all the stereotypes of my people. So a lot of times people think, and this is white people when thinking about racialized minorities, but this is also straight people when thinking about the gay community or not disabled people thinking about the disabled community. A lot of people think the way to relate is to try to show that you understand something about this other culture. Like me telling my black friends, oh, I sure do love Outkast. Oh my gosh. Or I love Earth, Wind and Fire or whatever, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, white people, stop trying to. Lizzo's so great. Did you hear her? No, stop. Instead, be willing to laugh at your own stuff. Kind of like your colleague. Your colleague was ready to laugh. But here's the thing, is that you didn't want to send that because you knew there could be consequences. You knew that because oftentimes white comfort and white discomfort is placed above the safety of other people. Right. And so that's part of the reality, is that offending a white person can shut down a room. And so, and when you think about that, it's like the sneakiest tactic that my people use. Right. And when I do anti-racism training with groups that have a lot of white people, and they bring up some other part of their identity, maybe they're part of the Jewish diaspora, maybe they're part of the LGBT community, and they bring that up, I say, thank you for bringing that up. Hopefully you understand a little bit about what it means to be marginalized. But now let's go back and talk about race. Now we want to center on race today. And so again, there are these tactics sometimes when people are uncomfortable because white people, as a rule, prioritize politeness and comfort.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's so good. You're so funny. I can see where everything connects and just works together.
It does. Yeah.
Especially for the field that you're in. But yeah, talk more about self-awareness, even like just day-to-day talk. How can self-awareness improve the state that we're in as society, in culture, in leadership, everything?
Yeah. So first of all, self-awareness is hard. One of the affiliates in my team, her name's Dr. K, and Dr. K, for her dissertation, studied some research on how self-aware managers are. And when there are these surveys about how self-aware managers are, you'd be shocked. Most staffs, most teams count only about 15% of their leaders as self-aware. Only 15%. So we have sort of a crisis. The crisis is that they're not self-aware. So some practical ways to get self-aware. Counseling is fantastic. I'm married to a counselor. I've been to counseling. Now, I'll tell you, I grew up. I'm a child of a German immigrant. I thought it was interesting. You have a German colleague. My dad's right off the boat. Günter Herbert, Siegfried Müller. You don't get any more German than that. And so, in a lot of immigrant communities, and from what I've heard in parts of the Black community, parts of the Latinx community, there's a stigma about mental health. There's a stigma about getting counseling, and this is one of the things that in my own whiteness, I had my U.S. white side, and then I had my German white side. It was two very different versions of whiteness growing up. And so when you're thinking about self-awareness, I think that one of the things you've got to be aware of is that you're already part of a culture. We all are part of a culture, but you don't feel like you're part of it. If your culture is a majority, if your culture is a privileged group, you don't feel like it is a culture. That's why I had that dude stand in front of me trying to tell me, this white guy trying to tell me that being tall is part of a culture. And I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. I want you to dig more deeply. So my colleague, Dr. K, she finds this thing about self-awareness. So counseling is a great way. There's an activity called the Johari window, which is a great thing. People can Google it.
Okay.
There's also spiritual explorations. I spent a lot of time with the Quakers, and Quakers have this great thing called a clearness committee. For those who are listening, you may have heard career coaches sometimes talk about a personal board of directors, right? That you're on your journey as an entrepreneur or as a leader, and that you find 3 mentors, your personal board of directors, to challenge you, to ask you questions. Well, apparently the Quakers have done this for hundreds of years. They call it a clearness committee, where someone's about to get married, they're about to take a new job, they're about to make some transition. They would get 2 elders from the Quaker community that they knew and 1 that they didn't know. And they would sit down in a room. They'd say, this is my decision. This is the decision I got to make. This is the thing in front of me. This is what I think about myself. So this self-awareness thing, this is what I think my picture of me is. And then the 3 Quakers would offer queries. It's just a fancy word for questions. They would ask questions and not give advice, just ask questions. Now, of course, sometimes the questions implied advice, like, oh, have you considered talking to your fiance's mother before you get married? Or, questions, but it's a suggestion, right? But so self-awareness, if you've got, so a counselor is a great way. The Johari window is an individual thing. There's a great book called 7 Languages for Transformation. It's by these researchers, Keegan and Leahy, and a lot of academic people. I'm not an academic deep down in my bones. I've sort of struggled through academia. So a lot of academic people come up with theories, and the theories are pointless. But these 2 people came up with a theory that's actually legit and can help you be more self-aware. So the book's called, I'm going to botch the name, but it's called, if you just Google 7 Languages for Transformation, it's a workbook where you go through and you're like, what are the things getting in my way? What are the things that I'm scared of? What are the things, and the things that I'm scared of, are they real or are they imagined? And could I test if they're real or imagined? Could I create a small, safe test to figure out if this thing my mind is telling me is really protecting me or deceiving me into thinking I'm less than I am, thinking that I'm not competent in a way, or whatever. And so they're great resources. Also coaches. I used to do coaching, but some of the members of my team are like certified life coaches, and they do coaching. So get a counselor, get a coach, find the Johari window exercise, get the 7 Languages for Transformation book, and spend some time looking in the mirror. If you have 3 trusted elders that you can trust, a clearness committee, a personal board of directors, and find some people who will just give it to you like it is. You need, the sugarcoat crowd. I don't need the sugarcoat crowd for this, right? I need the smack me in the face with it, right? And so like, this is why Dr. K, she and I actually just had lunch last week, and this is why, part of why I appreciate her is because she just tells me, she just says it. She's like, Mueller, is that thinking? What are you thinking? What is that? Stop that. Right. And she's got a directness to her that I appreciate that. And again, I grew up white. She grew up Black. She grew up with a family where more directness might have been the norm. I grew up with a family where passive aggressive weirdness was the norm. Right. So, get people that you can trust that'll tell you like it is. That's a great way to increase your self-awareness. Yeah.
I love that. Accountability.
Oh, heck yeah.
And then I also, I was giving you a little bit of my background when I was a part of
Yeah.
a team.
Yeah.
We read a book and it was about the soul. I forgot, it was by Cindy Trim. I forgot the name of the book.
Okay.
But one of the things of reclaiming your soul was to practice self-awareness. And I mean, I broke that word down to a T. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
self-awareness,
Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah.
And the one thing that goes alongside with the self-awareness is the action part. Because we can
Yeah.
become self-aware, we can understand where we messed up or what we're thinking, what we're doing. But then there's another side to that, which is the action part.
The action
Actually
part.
implementing, okay, if I learned this about myself, what can I do today to make it better, to become more self-aware, to not fall into the same trap
Yep.
or emotional cycle that I did last time.
Yeah. It's huge and it's hard. Especially it's hard when it involves other people
Mm-hmm.
because our emotions and our feelings for other people, whether it's that we care about them and we're invested in what they think about us, whether it's that it's a group of people that we don't want to feel embarrassed in front of, no matter what, we're giving people power. And so one of the things that's interesting is I know people who don't care what anybody thinks. And then I know people who are very obsessed with what everybody
Right.
thinks. I've chosen a path that's in between those two things. What I've chosen is I have, I don't know, 8 to 10 people who are the most empathetic, kindest, most genuine people I know. These are my family and my best friends. I care deeply what they think, and I don't care about what the rest of the world thinks. So
Mm,
rather than this chasing what everybody thinks or shutting off and not caring what anybody thinks, what if you could curate your own list of the people who share your values, who you know care about you unconditionally? What if you could put together your team? And they don't have to be in a room together. Like my team is, some of my team doesn't even know each other, right? But they're each there for me in a different way.
right.
And that's huge because when we're people pleasing, right? And I used to be a people pleaser, grew up in an abusive household. I was a people pleaser, and to tease apart the people pleasing thing is hard. It's hard. And then two, in spiritual traditions, and I grew up in the Bible Belt, right? I grew up hanging out. Oh my gosh, Lutherans, Baptists,
Wow.
Pentecostals, Methodists. You would not believe, my friend. You would not believe fellowship with a lot of different groups and a lot of different traditions. And from my spiritual perspective, there is in some ways a fundamental misunderstanding of the self
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to some versions of organized religion, where that's threatening the self, right? And I'm like,
Mm,
yeah, no, it's not threatening, because the self is what needs to reconnect with the divine. But if you can't sit with the self for a while and be with the self and understand the self and love the self, how are you going to be in communion with anything bigger than you, right?
right.
And so this is why I love the Quakers. The Quakers worship. Oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe me. A lot of times, Quaker meetings, they will sit in silence for an
Mm,
hour, for an
wow.
hour, to wait until the Spirit moves them to say something.
I love
And
that.
and for me as an extrovert, sitting in silence is hard, but it also makes you sit with yourself.
Right.
It makes, because I was in a lot of different churches that were very noisy, very loud, and I love that too, right? I was actually in college. I was the one white kid in a 90-member black gospel choir. So I don't know if you picked up on a theme in my life. I sort of accidentally ended up being the token white dude. But we sang in Baltimore, Annapolis. I got to sing with Richard Smallwood, who's a big name in gospel. I got to like go all over and have these amazing experiences. But I also know that religion can open us up or it can close us down.
Definitely.
On my own journey, I had to find the places where it opened me up more, where it kept me more humble, where the test was who I include, not who I exclude. That
Mm,
was where, because once upon a time I heard a great guy say, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's a high bar. And
right.
and all these other people in North Carolina are talking about this hot button issue, that hot button issue, whatever. And I'm like, look, friends, I've been alive 51 years. I'm still working on how to love my neighbor and love my enemy. If I ever get that down, I'll come talk to you about the other stuff. If I ever complete that love part, if I ever figure that out completely, then I'll join the next level of stuff that y'all are obsessed with or whatever. But
Right.
spoiler, I'm not ever going to get there. I'm human. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This has been so good, Alan.
Yeah.
So I want to transition really quickly into
Sure.
even though this whole episode has been fun,
Yeah.
and lighthearted, but I have a portion of the episode that's titled Soul Snacks.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Okay. So you have to give me the first word or, idea that comes to your mind. Okay.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Okay. So what song instantly puts you in a leadership mindset?
Oh my gosh. Okay, there's a song. It's called "Can I Get an Amen?" It's called the something in Treaty. What's the band called?
Sing it. Sing it for me.
It's like every morning it's country, but it's these two black artists. I don't like country music. I do not like country music. But these two black artists, and I have suddenly discovered that black country music is awesome, and that white country music is mostly not. But there's this. The lyrics are something like it's a husband and wife, right? And it's like Tuesday morning she's a certified teacher. Sunday morning she's a bona fide preacher. Blah 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 blah. But it's a great song. It's called The War and Treaty. That's the band. The War and Treaty. It's a husband and wife. The War and Treaty is called Can I Get an Amen? And oh my gosh, because it's all about commitment, right? And they're playing a little bit with the commitment between them and also spiritual a little bit. They're going a little on that, but also just like some of the lyrics are I keep her first, and then her lyric is I keep him first, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Send me that. I need to hear that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah. That was more than one word. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You gave us a vision.
Mm-hmm.
What's one everyday habit that keeps you grounded when things get complex?
Deep breathing. Breathing. And I'll tell you what, it's a friend of mine called it the 10-second miracle. Everybody, look, your body has a memory. Your body feels emotions when your mind and your heart doesn't even know they're there yet. Every day we breathe subconsciously to stay alive, but breathe consciously. Take 3, take 5, take whatever. Breathe deeply and intentionally. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so if your leadership had a flavor, what would it taste like?
Oh my gosh. So if my leadership So I was about to say a flavor that I like, but I'm not going to say that because I think that people outside of me, if I can have some self-awareness, I think that people outside of me would say that my leadership is either one of two things. It's either that warm cup of hot cocoa on a cold night that just is warm and affirming, or it's Pop Rocks, which I don't know if you, okay. So
the candy?
I'm a Gen X. Yeah. The candy. Because they like pop in your mouth. You just eat them and then they fizz in your mouth. And so I think some people think my leadership is very affirming and comforting. And some people think it's surprising and a little bit alarming when you're eating candy and then it's fizzing in your mouth, right?
Oh, wow.
So I think that's probably my two styles. Yeah.
I love that. See, I thought it would have been like something like some barbecue ribs or something.
Oh yeah.
You're like you have this black old soul in you.
I tell you, I do love North Carolina barbecue. And it's funny when I go, because I talk all over the country and I make jokes about barbecue, and the jokes work in Texas. They work in Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina. They don't work on the West Coast. On the West Coast, nobody cares about barbecue. over between Texas and North Carolina, South Carolina, we will argue because to me it's pulled pork. It's pulled pork with vinegar. Like that's North Carolina barbecue. South Carolina is pulled pork with mustard. I don't understand that. I'm not judging. I don't understand it.
Interesting.
Live your life, South Carolina. I don't get you, but dude, and then Memphis is the sticky ribs, and so people have some opinions, but in California, when I do speeches out in California, nobody cares. I'm like,
no one cares.
Yeah, no one cares about barbecue. Yeah.
Okay, last one. What is a movie or show that surprisingly taught you something about emotional intelligence?
Oh my gosh, the movie, and it's based on a book. It's called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. The author is a guy named Mitch Albom, and Mitch Albom, his famous book is called Tuesdays with Morrie. That's his famous book. But Mitch Albom was on ESPN. He was a sports commentator on ESPN. He was a sports writer for the Detroit Free Press up in Detroit. And he writes this story called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven that they turned into a movie. And let me just say this. Spoiler alert, the main character dies at the beginning of the movie. I mean, we know that because from the title, right? But he died thinking he was a failure. And then he meets these 5 people. And these 5 people teach him this one fundamental thing. Every one of us is far more connected to each other than we've ever imagined. And he had to die to learn it. But your listeners, you and me, we don't have to die to learn it. We can learn it now. That your life and my life are connected. They are intertwined. That everybody I see that and separate from status, right? I work with a lot of vice presidents, and you know what? Sometimes those vice presidents walk past the maintenance crew like that, like they're not human. And I got to stop by and say hello to the maintenance crew and just be like, "How are you doing today? You're part of this organization too." And this whole hierarchy thing that separates us, we got to stop that mess right now, because there is not one person that's more valuable than another person.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Alan, you have been amazing. I feel like there was so much more that we could have spoken about.
You can have me back. You can have me back again.
We just might have a part 2, because you have so much valuable information that is needed in this world.
Thanks.
And get yourself out there. Like, I don't know where you are, what you're doing, but keep doing it.
I'm all over. Can I tell people where they can find me if they want to find me?
Well, that was the next question.
Oh, great. I'm psychic. So my website is Adaptive Challenge Consulting, adaptivechallengeconsulting.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can find Adaptive Challenge Consulting on LinkedIn. You can find Alan Mueller on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, so you can find me there as well. But the bottom line is, I work with a lot of HR teams, businesses, universities, K-12 educators, nonprofits, anybody who needs leadership development, anybody who knows that their managers need to get better. That's what I do. And I do it we use humor, we use authenticity, and we use intersectional awareness of race and gender and all the things that make us us to make good learning happen. Yeah.
I love it. You're such a blessing. This has been awesome.
Thank you. It's been great. And sorry I missed it the first time that with the Benadryl and the allergies and all that jazz.
It's okay. We won't let the world know.
Okay. Oh, we'll edit that part. Okay, cool.
You know what? Just for that, I'm going to keep it.
Okay, there you go. All right, my friend. Thank you so much for this. This was fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you, Alan. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.